completely forgot to put this on before I started. And am I going to start over? I could. Or I could just keep going and there will be this super weird continuity error. It's fine. Everything's fine. Hello, lovely people of the internet, and welcome to the NovelTea Knitting Podcast. I am your host, Emma, here to talk to you about all things knitting, crafty, basically anything cozy that takes my fancy. In this episode, I have an update for you guys about how my knitting all the things in January went. And in addition, I've just got a few cozy things that I want to share with you guys. But of course, before we get started, I have to tell you what tea I'm drinking today. And today, you can tell that it's a very fancy tea because it is in my fancy little mug here. And you can tell that it's fancy because it holds almost no tea. I've always found this kind of funny, but it always seems like I always feel the fanciest drinking tea out of mugs that hold like 4 to 6 ounces of tea, which this qualifies for that. And like if you think about a typical teacup size, that is also only going to hold about 6 ounces of tea. This is David's Tea Silk Dragon Jasmine. It does have caffeine in it, which is usually kind of a no for me. I just have to be very aware of the fact that it has caffeine in it. So if my heart starts racing a little bit later, that means that I need to drink a full glass of water, basically. As long as I temper the amount of caffeine that I have or the amount of tea that I have that has caffeine in it with water and food, I'm fine, generally. I really, really needed the pick-me-up in this, and not the caffeine pick-me-up, the green tea pick-me-up, because this is one of my all-time favorite comfort teas. Even just the smell of it makes me, relax just a little bit, which I really need right now, because my husband and I are painting the house. Yeah, my husband and I are painting all of the rooms downstairs. So all of the rooms upstairs got painted before we moved in because I knew that was going to be a huge pain in the butt. Anyway, yes, so I am a little bit stressed out right now as we are trying to get the downstairs painted. Everything, of course, has to come away from the wall, off the wall, all the decorating that we've done, everything kind of coalesces into the middle of the room, we paint, and then everything has to get put back. And so it's not the most fun process. It reminds me very much of being under construction, which is what we were for like 8 months last year, and I hate it. So we are trying to get this done as quickly as possible. Let's move on to knitting content. So the first thing that I want to show you, I have not finished weaving in the ends just because honestly, just because I'm lazy, because it would have taken me all of like 30 seconds to weave in these ends, but it's fine. It's my planting seeds shawl! I had to check to make sure I had it facing the right side out because it's a garter stitch shawl, so the back looks quite different from the front. So it's not like technically reversible, but that being said, like if I accidentally put it on like backwards or something, like it's not going to be that big of a deal. So I'm really, really pleased with how this turned out. It is huge. It is super, super long, but it is so, so soft. I am just obsessed with this yarn. I don't even remember exactly what it is. I know that I put it in the description of my last video, but since I edited that, of course, I've forgotten. I know that it's Purl Soho and it's their singles base. So it's just scrumptious. Oh my gosh. I am expecting it to grow a little bit when I do block it, and then that will also make these stripes stand out a little bit more. So that will grow hopefully this way, like lengthwise rather than horizontally, because this is already more than long enough. And I think that this is a feature of this shawl. It's definitely not something that's supposed to block out, but it kind of like curls at the ends, which I think is just the cutest thing. And it's just a matter of, I think, the picot bind. It's either the picot bind off or it might just be nature of the shawl because it did increase so quickly. So yes, I did finish my first ever picot bind off, and there were definitely some moments in there where I wasn't totally sure that I had made the best choice in deciding to do this picot bind off. It took me 2 days of fairly concerted effort. It took me several hours, it must have been. But it does look really, really beautiful. So I can't really complain because it's gorgeous. So instead, I'm just going to bask in the glory of this shawl and how quickly I managed to knit it. It took me, I finished it about mid-January, a little later than mid-January. So but it's very pretty. And it's super warm, and I can't wait to wear it, and I really love how it looks on, like wrapped up like this. It's always good when I like how it looks on me, in addition to how it looks just hanging there, as you can see this thing hanging here as well. My chenille has not been blocked yet because, again, lazy. Right now, lately, I have been kind of fiddling with it, playing with it, seeing what I can do to make it feel better on me, to make the fit feel better on me, because I guess I can try it on for you guys again. As you can see, it is enormous on me, and so I am kind of not sure if I'm going to keep it, if I'm going to give it away, and so that makes me kind of just not want to block it. We're not exactly like meeting for knitting club or anything, which is the first place that I would look to give this away, because I know that those people will really properly appreciate this. But I have also looked into like just cinching it in the back, kind of. One of my knitting club members, Tana, she sent me a link ages ago of these pin sort of things that apparently used to be really popular, and I have never heard of them. I don't know if I just like missed that or what's going on there, but yeah, so, and it would essentially, in theory, just kind of like cinch this in the back here, not that much, but cinch this in the back so that I can actually use the buttons, because this does get buttons, and I just haven't put them on, but I do have the buttonholes made. I don't know if you can see that at all. They're going to be completely pointless if I don't find a way to make this fit on my body a bit better. Moving on, I finished something else that I completely forgot to put in the last episode, which was my Christmas socks. The yarn is West Yorkshire Spinners, which I had heard about in another podcast and every time she was working with it, I was like, I need some of this. And I actually found this yarn. I was expecting to have to order it online or something, but I found it in my local yarn store. So that was extremely exciting for me. But then at some point, I started working on these, I want to say in October, maybe? And at some point, I must have just gotten completely distracted because I forgot that they existed until I was like looking at my Ravelry page, and I've been trying to keep up with my projects at least a little bit, and I saw these on there and I was like, oh yeah, I should finish those, because I basically had like 15 rows left on one and the toe. So these socks are going to be added to my rotation because I wear Christmas socks all year long. Most of my sock collection is in fact Christmas socks, whether they're hand knit or just, regular store-bought socks. They're mostly Christmas socks. I don't generally block my socks. I think the exception to that is going to be what I'm going to show you next, which is my mulled wine socks. And that's just because my color work is not necessarily my forte, so I am going to want to have that, the way the blocking kind of evens out stitches a little bit, and I'm going to need that. So technically I got two more things, that's very important, finished in January. They were a couple of things that have been on the needles for ages, so I know that I should be proud, I should be happy, that's all I really wanted to get done, but I I did not get nearly as far in my mulled wine socks or in my patchwork pullover as I was hoping. So let's start with the mulled wine socks. Now I have something going on with these mulled wine socks that feels completely mental, especially because I am a one sock at a time kind of knitter. I do not do two at a time, except apparently now. Now I do two at a time. So first of all, I knit this sock, and I had this finished last episode, and I just needed to make a few changes to it. Basically, I was always going to be knitting 3 of these socks, which in itself is a little bit weird, but that's just what happens when you design patterns. I really want to get it right, and I want them to look right so that when I decide to take pictures and everything, that everything looks as good as it can. So I finished that one, looked it all over, decided what changes I wanted to make, and I cast on another one. That would be this one. So this is the next one that I cast on, and I did get past the ribbing very quickly, which longtime watchers will know is a huge deal for me because it took me about 4 months to get past the ribbing the first time. Bravo to me. Pat on the back. Really eagle-eyed viewers will also notice that the color work on this one is slightly different from the color work on this one. And that was not intentional, but it is what happened. So these 2 diamonds here, there's a gap between them, and that was because I frankly forgot that stitch. So I missed a row there, and I had knit basically all of this, and realized that I got there, and I decided that I kind of like this better. I decided that this pattern is a little bit more unique. Honestly, I don't want to say that it looks prettier, but it looks more like, quite frankly, what I want to name these, which is mulled wine by the fire. It's a bit of a stretch, but at least for me personally, you can kind of see the, like, a kind of almost a dancing flame in that. You have to really, really think about it, and you're just gonna have to trust me on this one. But more to the point, again, like, it's a little bit more different, and I decided that I really liked it. It also meant that I wouldn't have to rip back on these, on any of these rows, which I'm gonna be honest, was probably a bigger part of that decision than it ought to be. But, I mean, I asked my husband what he thought, and he also thought that this looked better just because, again, it's more unique. And this is the point where I'm splitting to do the heel flap and gusset. It's a little bit shorter than what I would normally make my socks, but that's just because when you stretch out the color work, it kind of loses, like, you can't see it as well. So I don't want it to go too far up my leg because then it loses a lot of that beauty. But yeah, so I got to this point and I decided that it was time to break for the heel. But as some of you will have noticed, I have started doing tutorials on my channel now, and my first tutorial was how to knit this corrugated ribbing at the top. And the next tutorial that I want to do is on how to knit a heel flap and gusset. I think that will be really useful. It'll be nice to have videos on how to do most of the things or anything unique on this sock up for when I want to post this pattern. So I got to this point and I wanted to keep working on these socks. So I cut this one here and started on my next one because I do not think that I could knit this entire sock plus this much of another sock before I need to record to knit the heel flap and gusset tutorial. So I have cast on my second Mulled Wine by the Fire socks, and this was facilitated primarily because I am knitting the top part on a different size needle than the bottom part. So I already had switched to these needles, so I can at least do the ribbing and the color work up here before I finish this one and need these needles again. So that's where I'm at with that. I am a little disappointed in myself that I wasn't able to get it done by the end of January, or at least get the pattern written up, because I know what the pattern is going to be now, and I could easily write it up. And I told my friends at Knitting Club, or at least one of my friends at Knitting Club, that I would have it done by the end of January, and what I really need to do is just sit down, take some time, write up the 3 sock patterns that I have come up with, that I have knit most of them. So I have my Falling Rain and Falling Snow socks that have not been released, have not been written, because I struggle to sit down for that long or make that commitment to potentially sitting down for that long. I have not been tested for this, but I am quite convinced that I have ADHD, which, I mean, we'll see. But as of right now, I don't know, so I'm not going to say that I have it, but I do exhibit a lot of the same, like, symptoms that people with ADHD have, but I am hoping to at least see someone about getting ADHD tested, which is something that for some people might seem like a really, really personal thing, like, why are you bringing this up? But for me, I find that basically the only ways that I ever feel empowered to seek help or seek answers about my mental health is when I see other people doing the same. I only really convinced myself to see a therapist after I watched a YouTuber do a long talk about how she was seeing a therapist. And I have another friend who already has an ADHD diagnosis and who has been on ADHD medication for a really long time. And talking to her has really helped me feel like this is something that I should at least look into, even if I don't end up with an official ADHD diagnosis. Anyway, I really just want to know. I haven't decided yet if I do have ADHD, if I would want to go on medication for it or not. It's there. It's a possibility. It's something that it's better to know, because knowing is half the battle. I think that's a saying from something or somewhere. Actually, while I'm on the topic, and this is the last thing about mental health, I promise. So my husband, let me see if I can find it. My husband sent me a thing about, he sent me this post, and I'm just going to read it to you because this is why I want to at least see. So the post says, undiagnosed neurodivergence is like being handed a video game that has been set to hard mode, but having people tell you over and over, it's on easy, why do you keep dying? Diagnosis is learning the game is on hard mode. It doesn't make it easier, but you can strategize. And I think that is so, so true. I think that in terms of mental health, really like having answers and knowing where you're at and why your brain works the way it does is a really big factor in finding ways to work around it or to target it. Anyway, that I will get down off my high horse now. We'll go back to knitting content. I know that's what you guys are actually here for. I'm so sorry about that rant. Okay, so the other thing that I am, of course, working on is my Patchwork Pullover. And yes, I am still just working on the front panel. I am frustrated because I didn't get this done, but at the same time, I am really pleased with the progress that I've made, so I'm somewhere in the middle there. But this is where I'm at. It is curling like crazy, but that's okay because I'm going to be picking up these side bits and adding panels in the middle. I did get to about the fourth stripe, I guess. I got to the fourth stripe and I thought to myself, can I make this work? Am I going to wear this sweater if it just has 4 stripes? And the answer, sadly, was no. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I would have liked to stop there, and it might have worked. This is the thing, is it might have been okay once I added, like, the ribbing at the bottom. But I am not willing to risk that might, and I think it will be easier to take out a stripe later than it would be to try to add one, if I really, really want to do that. So I am now almost done with the 5th stripe, and what has stalled me out now on this is that I want to try and add a bit of, like, a scooped neck, not a scooped neck, but like just a lower neck, just because I'm not positive that with the kind of yarn that I'm using that I'm going to love the feel of what the pattern says to do, which is just to knit everything straight across and then add on like an extra neck. Now I say that as I'm wearing a sweater that does come up like this, but I think and this is obviously store-bought, but I think it does like scoop quite a bit. So I have, I think, 6 more rows to go or so in this, and I'm going to cut out, like, not cut out, obviously, but just do some short row shaping so that I can have a bit of a scoop in the neck. And the trouble with that, of course, is that it requires thought. And I have just not sat down and figured out exactly where and how I'm going to do this shaping. I'm pretty sure I want it to be quite wide, so it'll probably be these 2 full squares here. And then I just need to figure out how to do that short row shaping. Do I come in, maybe? I'm thinking I'm going to come in a few stitches and then work outward so that the scoop on the neck goes from like here to here, and there's like a little bit of a curve. But I need to figure out how I'm actually doing that. So once I do, though, I will be onto the next panel, and I think that one's going to go, well, I know it's going to go much more quickly than this, because this I've been working on for months and months and months. And I'm very pleased with how it is, how it's looking. I want to thank Heather, because I don't think I've mentioned this in a very long time, but Heather from my knitting club gave me a bunch of this bulky yarn because she wasn't using it and had decided that she didn't want it anymore. And so most of this sweater is courtesy of Heather. So thank you, Heather. The last thing that I'm still working on is my Banff cardigan, and this is the amount that I have gotten done. And really the only reason that I'm showing this to you, because this is a side panel and what I have finished is practically non-existent, but the reason that I wanted to show you this is because I need to shout out all the moms and dads out there who are knitters, who somehow find time to knit when there's an infant around, because most of the work that has been done on this, probably 2/3 of it, I managed to do like just in the car with my husband, but the other 6 stitches was the culmination of 4 days of babysitting. So this is my purse knitting, and so this is the only project that I took with me when I went and babysat for my niece. And Gwen is just perfect. I've not had, I don't have any siblings that are older than me or that have had kids or anything. I am not close enough with cousins, so Taylor's daughter is the closest thing closest infant that I've ever really been around. And she is perfect. And absolutely no one could ever convince me otherwise. That being said, she is at the age now where she's kind of into everything, and you have to watch her very closely. So I didn't babysit for super long or anything, and in the middle of my babysitting, she had like an hour and a half nap every day. I only babysat for 4 days. It was Tuesday, Thursday for 2 weeks, and like I had it so easy. It was so easy. Her dad was even there while I was babysitting. He was working from home though, so he was only there like for emergencies basically. But I really genuinely thought that like I would be able to like leave her on the floor and like put on some backyardigans or something, and she would entertain herself mostly. But that is not how 9-month-old babies function, apparently. Because anything that I had, she wanted. So if I was knitting, she wanted to see what I was doing. She wanted to play with my yarn, she wanted to play with my needles, and she didn't really care for it when I tried, like, as long as I took it away and then, like, moved on to something else, she didn't care. But if I tried to take it away from her and she could still, like, see it, she didn't like that very much. And so for, like, you know, the few hours or whatever that I was with her, she just needed basically my full attention. And so, like, I still want to have kids. I still want to be a mom eventually. And I've always known that it's a lot of work being a mom. I just, like, I never really had a frame of reference for really what that meant. And I know that like all children are different and all of this and everything, and this was 4 days of like a very small portion of her babyhood. But still, I just want to say kudos to any moms who actually managed to get any knitting done with infants, young children, kids of any sort, really. I have 2 more things that I want to share with you guys, and they are not really knitting related. Well, one of them is kind of knitting related, but one of them is not. And it's my blanket. It's this blanket. The reason that I'm showing you this blanket is because it is one of my favorite, like, blankets are one of my favorite things in the entire world. Like, that shouldn't really surprise people, because I do say at the beginning of the show that, like, I'm going to talk about anything cozy that takes my fancy. Cozy is my word. It's my catchphrase. It's like what I aim for in all things. These blankets in particular, this is a brand of blanket that I am just completely obsessed with called London Fog. And they sell them in like the local grocery store for us, which is Meijer, and I just love them. I think I have 5 of them. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have 5 of them. One, actually, that my husband just got me because he's amazing, and every once in a while he'll just, like, go to Meijer and he'll come out and he'll have gotten me a new blanket. He's done this twice now. Around the same time each year, when I'm feeling kind of stressed out just from stuff that we're doing and everything, and so he went into the store and picked this up for me. And it was so sweet, and I love it. But this one is the one that he actually picked up for me as a surprise last year. And I love it. It's basically my favorite color. Like, my favorite color is red, but this burgundy is close enough. This has gotten a lot of use. A lot of use. And the dogs really love these blankets as well. And they love to, whenever they're trying to make themselves comfortable, they like dig at whatever they're on. This has seen a lot of abuse. And so this last 2 weeks, I have been just kind of slowly but surely repairing it, because it has tons and tons of these little rips that slowly but surely, like, have been multiplying across the blanket. So you can see it's just on, like, the top here, and I have just kind of had a needle and thread on the stand next to me while I'm watching TV, and I will put this on my lap, and I will just kind of work on this while I'm watching TV. I'll manage to get you know, a few done at a time. Sometimes I'll sit down for a long period and I'll get like 10 to 15 of them done, and then sometimes I'll just like do 2 or 3. And yes, there have been that many rips in this. I want to mention also that this is an outlier. Like, none of the other blankets, this hasn't happened to any of the other blankets. Or if it has, I haven't noticed because they have like a lot of white in them, but I'm fairly certain that this has not happened, and it has not in any way diminished my love for these blankets. But it is something to keep in mind, if you want to purchase one. But yeah, so they're just, like, they don't really get in the way of using the blanket at all. I have used this through all of the rips the whole time, and it doesn't really bother me. The problem is really just, like, aesthetic, and also I'm worried about the rips getting worse if, like, the dog's claws catch on any of these. And so I've just been kind of slowly but surely taking a needle and thread to it, and I wanted to show it off because I'm very proud of myself for taking this on. Like, it seems like such a simple thing, but especially that idea of just sitting down and kind of, like, working through it a few at a time is not something that I would typically do. So, yay! And then the other thing that I want to show you guys is my hot water bottle. So, this hot water bottle is my first ever, first of all. I have never owned a hot water bottle before. I think it is something that is much more common in Europe and the UK. This is not really something that a ton of US homes have, I don't think. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I did not even know that these existed until I was watching like some British YouTuber or something, and they mentioned that they were going to be using theirs. So this is full of water. I have it right now. I just kind of like perpetually keep it full of hot water at the moment because it's very cold and I'm very stressed also. And so it's like perfect because I get neck aches like right here. And that is just not a good spot for what my usual solution would be, which is a heating pad. But that has to be plugged in. It doesn't really like have any weight to it, so if I wanted to hit a specific area, it's not really gonna do that very well because I would have to like hold it there, and then that just makes it worse. But the reason that this is making it onto the show, besides the fact that it is very cozy, and I recommend any American that has not been aware of this, that you should order one immediately. Also, there are some really lovely knitting patterns online to make covers for these. Now, obviously I have not done that yet, but I did only get this like 2 weeks ago. So I've had this pattern in my queue to be knit for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years. I do think actually that the date that I added it to my Ravelry queue is on the project somewhere, or on the pattern somewhere in my queue, so I will put that date up as necessary. And I don't remember what it's called, I don't remember who it's by, but I am obsessed with the look of this pattern, and I very much intend to make it. And actually I'm planning to make it very soon, but I was on a complete ban for casting on new projects for January, and now that I am past that ban, even though I haven't finished everything, I am past that ban, so I'm gonna start casting things on again. I'm hoping that it'll be like a really fast knit, something that I can like bang out really quickly and feel really like pleased with myself about. But yeah, I saw this and I was like, basically I've ordered this hot water bottle specifically so that I can knit that pattern. Like, I have wanted a hot water bottle, I think it's a great idea, but the real impetus for me to buy this was that I wanted to knit that pattern, and it has been in my queue for so long, and I refuse to get it out of my queue because I know that I want to knit it so badly. So that's going on the list. I will be knitting that very soon, but I wanted to share this little bit of cozy with you guys. But that is everything for this episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I know that I went on a lot of tangents, so I thank anyone who has stuck around for the whole thing. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!